Okay, hello, Tech 400. Braden Evans coming at you with our week 12 material. We're going to have our lecture today focused on peer review and team writing. And I should call out that there's some work going on in the house today, and so it's possible there is some background noise. I apologize for that, but hopefully you're able to hear me clearly in this recording. All right. So something, we don't all love to do, but we need to do. We work in teams, we write in teams, and we need to be good peer reviewers. We need to be helpful in our constructive criticism of each other's works, right? And this is an opportunity, really, when we're reviewing each other's work. It helps us become better writers. And when other people are reviewing our work, that also helps us become better writers. So it's really a great, valuable exercise to do. And involves a lot more work than we normally give to it, right? We usually sort of undervalue this, and we'll say, I'll just slap the parts together and do an edit in Microsoft Word, and we're done, and that it really, there's so much more to peer reviewing. Okay, so we need to think about how we can evaluate and critique and improve someone else's work, but communicating it in a way that is, sensitive, right? We have to be sensitive to each other's pride. And, we take a lot of pride in the hard work that we do. So when someone says, well, you should change this and that, it can sometimes be hard to receive that information. So we really need to be sort of careful in terms of how we deliver our critiques, right? And really on the receiving end, we need to be open to some criticism as well, right? So we need to be mindful that, hey, someone here is trying to help me, and so I should take their criticisms to heart, right? One way to make all of this whole process much easier is to have a meeting early on in the process, in the project, when the project is brand new, and we kind of establish our goals and objectives, try to, define our project in terms of the scope of the topic, the audience, how technical should this be? How general should this be, right? Get all of that mapped out in advance, and then, we're clear about how the critiquing is going to take place, right? So this way, when someone comes and says, hey, I think you should change this and improve this, it's not a surprise, right? It doesn't shock somebody. Now, as a peer reviewer, you'll be asking all kinds of questions, but you're writing, as a writer, you should be asking questions of your reviewers as well, right? So if you're working on a project on a virtual machine, some kind of virtual machine, and you write, a section or a couple paragraphs about this virtual machine, explaining what it is and how it works. Now you can ask your reviewers, say, hey guys, pay attention to this section. What do you think? Do I explain it clearly? Does it make sense? Um, and so, you can start to gauge, your writing based on the specific things you may be looking for in terms of feedback, right? Think about the audience, right? Think about the context. Is it technical people that are reading this? If so, okay, is it appropriately technical writing, or is it the general public and we should avoid too much technical communication? This sort of thing, right, that we can ask. All right. And so what's very typical for us, for you guys, post-secondary students, you got a lot of work, a lot of different projects. And I see this all the time. It's typical that on the night before the project is due, we slap our pieces together. Everything is, thrown together, and we do maybe a quick spell check, right? Spell and grammar check. Okay, it's good, submit, right? Because you have another thing to move on to. But that's like the minimal bit of reviewing, and it really doesn't like improve the quality of a paper. It might improve a few spelling errors, catch a few spelling errors, but it doesn't actually improve the writing in any way, right? And so if you really wanted to take, say, like an average paper from a B level to an A level or an A plus level, you need to consider so much more, right? Like, is it interesting? Does it relate to the audience that's reading it, right? Is it appropriately technical? Is it persuasive? Do we achieve our objective with this? We're trying to, get an idea across. Is it consistent, right? Is it well formatted? All of these things, right? So there's so much more to peer reviewing than just a spell checker, right? Now, when we're giving our critiques, we got to be mindful, right? So you don't just, critique style, right? Say, I would write it this way, so you should write it this way. Well, no, that's not what it's about, right? Obviously, if it's a group project, we understand that, different sections will be written with slightly different approaches, right? But it should be, your criticism should be based on more sort of universal ideas, right? Like, does it make sense? Is it clear? Is it appropriate for the audience, and so on, right? And when you're doing so, you need to be explicit and clear. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, you can't just say, this paper's disorganized, right? That doesn't help. That doesn't give the writer some kind of direction on how to address, what you see as being a problem. So you can explain specifically, hey, your sections seem to be out of order, out of sequence. The part you've written at the end should really go at the beginning. You should use more headings to help organize the material, and so on, right? So some specific constructive criticism. When I say constructive criticism, I mean criticism that is designed to help, right? Okay. Sorry, I just flipped ahead a little bit. Yeah, so what I'm saying is you give a little bit of a critique, but you also give an indication on how to correct the problem, right? What can they do to improve it? Not just this is bad. And that's usually much more helpful when you're reviewing your peers' work. Okay. Another thing, another example is like if you're giving the direction on, yeah, you should switch the order of these two paragraphs. Tell them why, right? Oh, the material in this section is a little bit more general. That should go first. Then as you get more specific, that should be the second, right? And so give people that kind of direction, and it ends up, being a lot more helpful, right, for the writer. Don't, rewrite the draft in the way you would write it. Okay, that's not your responsibility as a peer reviewer, and it doesn't really help your partner either. You can make suggestions, right? But it's not your document, it's the team's document. So always be mindful of that and give your partner the chance to change and improve things, right? Always try to lead with something positive, right? So, hey, great research. You've got all kinds of super information here. I think it'll be even more effective if we find a better way to organize it, something like that. So you're saying this is really good, but here's how we can make it better. That's how you deliver constructive criticism in a way that it should be, well received by your peers. Okay. All right. And then when you're done, give like a summary paragraph, or like a few sentences at the end to give your high level feedback, your general feedback, right? Really good, well targeted at the audience. Maybe try to use more headings to help organize your sections, and avoid repeating yourself in some longer sentences, right? So these general trends that you have observed throughout the paper. So that summary kind of gives the overall impression, and it gives the writer some direction when they now go back to the draft and start to work on it again. Okay. You can also kind of organize your comments based on the sort of the type of mistakes being made. So if you're addressing something with grammar, you say, hey, just so you know, you keep saying I in your paper, but really it should be more sort of direct. So avoid using I or myself or something like that, right? Then maybe you have a section on organization where you talk about the use of headings and subsections and following a table of contents, something like that, right? You should also prioritize, like, here are some minor revisions that, if we make them or not isn't gonna change the whole complexion of the paper. But then some major ones which, we really need to focus on, right? So maybe there's some errors in the reporting, or maybe there's some, poorly formatted figures and tables. So sort of prioritize which are the most important revisions and which ones are minor. Okay. For the writer, sometimes you can give some pointed questions, right? So, hey, I'm not so sure what you mean by this. Are you trying to say this, right? So asking specifically, and that'll help the writers, maybe they'll look back and go, oh yeah, you know what? When I write the question in this way, it's not so clear, right? And so maybe I need to kind of rethink about how I present that information, okay? Um, but be sympathetic, be kind, and find ways to bring out the positives, right? Make sure you're letting your partner know you value their work, you appreciate all their hard work, and you're just here to help make it even better, right? Okay, so that's kind of the big ideas behind peer reviewing and editing, right? Now we can get into team writing a little bit. And so, it's something that you guys are doing here at Seneca for sure, but it's not the end of it, guys. I hate to tell you, team writing is here to stay in your careers. I do it all the time, and you will too. Okay. Doesn't matter really which area of the economy you're in, if you're in the private sector or in government or wherever, it's going to be a reality, right, in our lives. So, be prepared and cultivate good practices, some good tendencies when it comes to being a good teammate when it comes to written projects. Okay, um, and so if you think back to week two, I think week two in our course this semester, we addressed teamwork, and I wanted to focus on it so much I gave you guys a quiz about it, right? And the focus there was sort of like what makes a good team. And one of the things we talked about, you guys did true colors, self-assessments. We talked about diverse teams being better than teams that are filled with people with the same skill set, right? And so here's just like a scenario for you guys, and it could be something you've already experienced in your time at Seneca. Okay, so here's a tech writing team, okay, that is writing a report on the latest developments in cloaking technologies. Okay, so a technical communications course or a technical research course, right? And so here's the team that has been put together. You have Sean, okay, electrical engineer, major, works at a law firm, okay, part-time while doing courses. Tracy does not have a technical background, but she's an English major, so lots of good kind of language and writing skills. Sanjeev focuses on computer science at school and also does graphics and software as a job part-time. John Chang, soon going to be majoring in engineering, but working on language skills, right? And then you have Alice, who's like an undeclared major, doesn't really give any sort of specific skills, right? She's like, maybe I'm in the wrong course. Okay, so here's a real mix, right? You've got sort of technical, language, technical, and maybe a generalist, right? Somebody who's not really specific in any area. And I'll tell you what, I would rather have a team like this than a team with 5 technical people. Okay. That's what I guess the point I'm trying to get across. And we'll see if we can find some roles for these people as we talk about team writing a little bit. Okay. So, writing a team project is so much more involved than just kind of getting together, saying, you do this part, you do this part, you do this part, and we're done, right? And I'll do this part. You really need to lay out sort of the rules of engagement at the beginning, right? And you need to meet early and meet often, right? To set up some guidelines and go through all of these planning stages, right? How to select your topic, defining your audience, brainstorming to get to some like specific topics and sections that you're going to focus on, creating an outline for your paper, doing the research, taking notes, what kind of graphics are we going to use, and so on. Okay. So team writing is a big project overall. And it's important to set some of these ground rules at the beginning. And it's something that I think most students don't do because, you guys are busy with other things, but it's a worthwhile investment of your time. Okay. You want to capture sort of people's profiles and decisions with like an overall team plan, like some kind of document. It could even have some, contract components like, hey guys, we are going to meet every Monday after class for half an hour and just talk about our project, right? These kind of things can be so helpful to keep everybody on track and share ideas and produce something that's really of high quality, right? Um, you know, a lot of the work you can do on your own, but you should be reconnecting and meeting again on a regular basis, right? So that whatever main section you're working on, everybody should be working on something, some primary section of the paper that you're, connecting, checking in with your team, and you're not, it prevents you from maybe going in a direction that's not consistent with the rest of the group, right? Keeping things sort of cohesive and together. Okay. So get together as a group, come up with ideas, then go off on your own, write your own sections, then come back and get together again and do this on a regular basis. Okay. And so, it's nice to give everybody a bit of a role within the project. So maybe there's someone who's more of a leader coordinator, right? And they can be the one that sort of finalizes things and helps direct people, right? Maybe there's someone who's more focused on research, someone on visual communications, someone who's really good with editing, right? And technical info and so on, right? Play to your strengths. Every team member is going to have a different set of, strengths, and they should really try to exploit those, right? We should really work on our strong points, okay? You balance the workload. And one thing I would say that you should always be mindful of is that um, equal, I guess no, how would I say it? Fair distribution of the work is not always equal. Okay, what do I mean by that? Well, maybe there's someone with a technical background who's much better suited to do the research. So maybe they do a lot of the research, right? But if they do that, maybe they'll make some notes, but they won't do all of the writing, right? And maybe there's someone else who's not so technical, but they're really good with languages, so they could do the writing, right? So you go back to our group there. Tracy, our English major, could maybe do a lot of the synthesis. Synthesis is pulling that material together and making some nicely written, clear paragraphs, right? But maybe some of the more technical members of the team can be focusing on research, getting that information, and then, putting that information into notes, into bullet points so that Tracy has something to work with, right? And then you meet, review, make sure you're staying on track, identify any potential issues, and keep moving forward, right? Sometimes it's good to have team bylaws, rules of engagement, right? Hey, if we can't come to a decision on something, we have a strategy, a vote, whatever it is, right? How do we resolve, problems that come up? It's so common and it's so normal, right? And I think a lot of times we think, running into problems with group work is such a disaster, but really it's just a normal course of doing work when you're a lot of people working together. So I think the key is finding a way to address it, right? Finding the solutions to the problems. That's the key. And the better you are at that, the better a team member that you will be, right? Making sure people's workloads are balanced is really important. That's going to keep people happy in the team setting, right? So give everybody a fair share of the work, and you yourself need to, do your fair share of the work. Now, going back to our team, you remember our last team member? Who was it? I think it was Anna. I can't remember the name, but that was the student that had, no relevant skills, right? I don't have a technical background. I don't even know if I'm in the right course. Well, guess what? That can be a critically important team member. Okay, somebody with that kind of, less obvious skill set, they can find lots of different ways to contribute to the project. Okay, so they wouldn't need, say, some technical knowledge to do the formatting, right? Format all the references, put the whole reference section together, make sure all of the in-text citations are correct. go through the figures and graphs and tables of content and cover page, all those things. The formatting can take a lot of time. So they can really help with that. They can help with meeting notes. They can help, coordinating the group. So a lot of different ways you can make a contribution if you don't have that technical background, right? Now, really, sometimes you just get these people that will ghost the team, right? And it's terrible, but it's true. And this happens every semester with me. I always have group work, and sometimes I need to tell a group or a partner. I say, you know what? It's time to fire them, right? So you have a responsibility to try to make it work, right? If you've been assigned as a team, you don't want to come to your boss and say it's not working out all the time. You don't want to be seen as someone who can't find solutions to problems. So you got to do your best to make things work. But if it's really obvious that this person's not going to contribute, talk to your boss, you talk to your prof and say, you know what, we'd probably be better off without them, right? It really helps if you have a bit of a contract at the beginning, some kind of plan that you've written out early on in the process where you say, if you're not contributing, you're not doing your part, here's how we're going to address the issue, right? So having some rules, taking the time to kind of lay the ground rules at the beginning can really help you when you have to address problems later on, okay? You want to have a general style guide, like, our audience is not technical, so don't write in technical terms, okay? Everybody does that, right? But at the same time, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 different sections, and it'll be obviously written by different people, right? That's okay, as long as the general voice is similar, right? So it doesn't seem like someone's working on a totally different project, right? So just be consistent with your formatting. Make sure you're kind of addressing it from the right context, whether it's really technical or not, to help kind of ensure that there's some consistency across the sections, okay? And then, of course, we come full circle. We come back to this whole idea of peer review. You should be meeting and reviewing drafts more than once, okay? Do it as a team. Don't underestimate the value of a good, constructive, critical peer review. It's so helpful. You identify so many issues when you have, your team kind of looking things over. And then, when it comes to the finishing touches, you should have a final master editor to kind of revise this. At this point, you're just looking for consistency, looking at formats, making sure it looks like it's, a paper that was sort of put together intentionally, right? Not just a bunch of different standalone parts that were done separately. Okay, folks, so that is your week 12 lecture on peer reviewing and team writing. I apologize for some noise in the background, but I hope you found it interesting and look forward to seeing you in week 13. Bye for now.